Well, good morning again. It's good to have all of you with us. If you're watching live on Facebook, we want to welcome you also. Just let us know you're there. Say hi and hit like, whatever you got to do there. Just let us know that you are watching live on there. Well, some time ago, I was having a conversation with a young man. And we got into this whole topic of talking about our faith. Or at least I got into the topic of talking about my faith, is what I should say. And he said, I just have a lot of questions about God. I have a lot of questions about Christianity. A lot of things in my mind just don't add up at all. And I looked at him and I said, okay. I said, well, then let's have those conversations. Let's have those talks. Let's find out what your questions are, and let's go through them, and let's talk about them. That was about 2 years ago. I'm still having those conversations with him today. I kind of lost contact with him a while ago, and then found out he was working at the hospital, so I go there periodically now to get some coffee and talk to him and try to keep those conversations going about, what is God all about? And I think for many of us, we've come across this in our lives. We've come across where people, they have questions about God. Things about God just don't always add up in their minds. And maybe you're sitting here today and you're saying, Andrew, I really have some questions about the Christian faith. And if you're not a Christian, I'm sure you probably do. And if you're a Christian, you're going to want to know how to be able to answer some of those questions. In fact, you're expected to know the answers to some of those questions. For example, and this is kind of our verse, really our only verse for the entire morning, but Peter says in his first letter in the New Testament section of the Bible, he says, but in your hearts, this is in your notes, it'll be on the screens, but in your hearts regard Christ, the Lord is holy, ready at any time. Would you underline that in that verse? If you got your Bible open or you got your notes open, underline that. Ready at any time to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Yet do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience so that when you are accused, those who disparage your good conduct in Christ will be put to shame. So you see, this whole idea of people asking questions about the Christian faith, this isn't something that's new, folks. This is something that's been around for centuries. People have questions. Now we're in a series on how to make an impact on another human life. And I've been arguing that the way to do that is to introduce them to Jesus. We've talked about why making the impact matters. We've talked about how to invest in people's lives. We talked about that last week and kind of extend that invitation out to them of coming to this relationship with Jesus Christ, this invitation of what the Christian faith is really all about. And today we're going to look at what happens when you actually get into a conversation about spiritual things with a non-Christian friend. So we're going to look at 12 of the most common questions non-Christians have for Christians when they get into a conversation about the Christian faith. At least these are the 12 that are usually brought up to me as we talk about faith. So I think we've got a pretty good list to kind of walk through. Obviously, we could have expanded this list to 1 million questions that people have, but I think that these are the 12 most common ones. And if you're here today because somebody did invite you, listen up. Because I think that as we go through these 12 questions, I think we're going to answer maybe some of the questions that maybe you have about the Christian faith. So let's get started. And these particular questions, they're not in any particular order this morning or anything like that except for the last one. I saved the biggest question of all for last. So let's jump in kind of randomly to these questions. Number one in your notes. What about all the contradictions in the Bible? If you have a set of notes, when you came in, you were given a worship folder. Pull out those set of notes that's inside of there. We're going to work through those together this morning. What about all the contradictions in the Bible? Well, I kind of have a stock answer for that when anybody asks me that. Here's what I say. When somebody comes up to me and says, hey, Andrew, what about all those contradictions in the Bible? I always say, okay, show me one and let's talk about it. And you know what 9 times out of 10 happens? There's stunned silence. Because 9 times out of 10, they don't really have one that's just right there in their mind. They really don't know of any. They've just heard that there's contradictions. And when they can't give me one, I always quickly follow up with this. If you want to dig around and see if you can find one, I'll be happy to talk with you about it. But I'll tell you what I think you're going to find. I think that they're going to find that this is really a myth about the Bible. It falls into that kind of urban legend category of things. And all the supposed contradictions are really just simply misinterpretations of the text, or maybe a misunderstanding of the text, or maybe something taken out of context. And they're quickly cleared up by an informed reading of the text. Now, I've been reading and studying the Bible really in depth now for a little over 20 years. And I've never found a single contradiction or error in the Bible. Not one. So that's kind of how I deal with that first one. Number 2, how can anyone know if God really exists? How can anyone know if God really exists? Now, to me, that's a pretty easy one to answer, but it's a big question for a lot of people when they're coming to this whole idea of understanding the Christian faith. You see, there are more signs that point to God's existence than there are signs that point to Him not existing. Let's just look for 1 second at creation. Now, we can get into a whole discussion about how the world came into existence at another time. But we know, just based off of science, that you can't have matter come from nowhere. So where did matter come from? Now, that can be a deep question, can it? That can be a very deep question, but I think it's a pretty easy one to answer. Matter had to come from somewhere and had to be put there by something. And I believe that science and God, and this is a big thing of mine, I believe that science and God can work together to show forth the existence of God. Now, that's one simple little sign pointing to something or someone who stands outside of our existence, outside of space and time. But there are God signs really all over the place, aren't there? Even if you don't look any further than the observable universe. And they're meant to be there. Listen to how the Bible puts it. Psalm 19. It says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the expanse proclaims the work of His hands. Day after day they pour out speech. Night after night they communicate knowledge. There is no speech, there are no words, their voice is not heard. Their message has gone out to the whole earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens He has pitched a tent for the sun." So we can see all through Scripture, as we look at this, we can see that there had to be something there. That the heavens declare that God is there. That something had to bring all of this matter together. To bring about a creation of this entire world. And not just our world, but this universe that is so expansive. That we can't even begin to even figure out where the end of it is. Because it probably doesn't end. Number 3. Why doesn't God make His existence more clear? Why doesn't God make His existence clear? Well, obviously, many of us think He has. But most people are asking, why hasn't He made His existence more clear? Why doesn't He force us to believe and make it such a slam dunk question that nobody can even begin to question it? I mean, wouldn't that be best? And again, that's really honestly a great question, isn't it? I mean, think about this for a second. This morning, I really want you to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who is struggling through this whole idea. Peter says we need to be ready to give an answer for what we believe in. And I'm hoping that this morning, through this, is very practical, that we can give an answer. And that's a great question. And the answer may actually surprise you. You ready? He doesn't want to make it the slam dunk like that. Because it wouldn't be best. And it's because He loves you and He wants you to love Him. He wants you to be a person who freely, and get what I'm saying here, He wants you to be a person who freely enters into a relationship with Him, not someone coerced into a relationship. Think about it for just a second. God could make Himself known to you in such a way that you would be reduced into a cringing, trembling, blown away person who would then have no choice but to believe. And what kind of a relationship would that be? Would that be real? Would that be a real relationship? That would be more of conquest than courtship, more of a power play than really a passion play. You see, God isn't after mere belief. He's after your heart. But make no mistake about it. If you say, but at least he could do more than just kind of paint signs in the stars, couldn't he make himself a little bit more accessible than that? And the answer is sure. But don't forget kind of the headline of the Christian faith. You ready? He did. In fact, he came down from heaven and took human form and walked the earth and declared exactly who he was and what he wanted for us. And then made it possible for every single person to be in relationship with him. You see, that's who Jesus is. That's who Jesus is. God himself in human form, making himself known and calling the world back to himself. So again, when you say, why doesn't God make himself more known? Don't miss the headline, because he did. He came. He came to this earth in human form. He made himself known, didn't he? Number 4, I believe in God. Why do I need a specific religion? I believe in God, but why do I need a specific religion? That's a big question for people, because the mantra of the day is wanting to be spiritual but not religious. To have a denomination, a creed, a set of doctrines kind of attached to your spirituality. You don't really want that. So it would be nice to be able to say, God, yes, religion, no. And then to ignore something like the Christian faith, because then in your mind, you're starting to get to a religion. But here's the problem with that. If you tell me you believe in God, then my question to you is going to be, tell me about the God you believe in. Tell me about the God you believe in. I mean, who is this God you believe in? What is he like? Is he personal or impersonal? Is he kind of this energy force, or is he a father? Is he good? Is he bad? Is he moral or is he immoral? Does he have any connection to Jesus or not? You have to have all of that kind of settled, right? You've got to kind of figure all that out. Otherwise, you don't really believe in anything. Now, once you start figuring out what you believe about this God, then you're going to start putting yourself in one religion camp kind of by a default, almost, so to speak. As in the God of the Bible, the God of Islam, one of the 330 million gods of Hinduism. You can't just say you believe in God, because if you do, and you say he exists, then he has form and he has substance, he has personality, he has identity, and there's a religion, if you will, that necessarily comes with all of that. Because all religion is basically just a defined belief, although we as Christians believe in a relationship that goes a little bit further than just religion. But we come to this defined faith. So you still, even if you're kind of exploring, you still have to come back and you still have to explore Christianity in this, right? I believe in God, but not any specific religion. Well, if you're really getting down to the nitty-gritty of it all, and you're really getting down into this whole idea of who is God, what is God, you have to explore, if you're going to be intellectual at all, you have to explore Christianity. When I was a kid, I was really struggling with my faith. My dad's a pastor. I have 3 brothers. They're all pastors. One of my brothers was my youth pastor growing up. So no matter where I turned, it was always somebody from my family staring me in the face. And I went to my dad and I said, Dad, I'm really struggling with this. I had gone on a missions trip to South America where I was exposed to Hinduism. I was exposed to Islam. And I was really starting to question this whole idea, is the God of Christianity real? I mean, is that really what we believe? I mean, just the what if question, right? What if Islam is right? What if Hinduism is right? And I questioned that. And I went to my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I'm really questioning this. And I thought for certain, Dad being a pastor and all that kind of stuff, I thought for sure Dad would say, well, son, you're a Christian. And you believe in Jesus, and you believe in God. And my dad looked at me and he goes, I guess you better figure that out, right? And I was like, I thought you'd just tell me what to believe, Dad. And Dad said, listen, if I told you what to believe, then it wouldn't be real for you, would it? That's what I love about my dad and my mom, is they made Christianity become real for us kids. It wasn't just, this is what we do because this is who we are. This is our family, so we're just going to believe in God. That's what we do. It became so much more than this forced belief. It became, son, you better figure it out. And so I began to read the Bible. I began to study Hinduism. I began to study Islam. And a few weeks after that, I came to my dad and I said, well, the Bible's the only thing that makes sense. So I guess I believe in Jesus. And Dad said, it's a good thing you did that. And then we talked about it. I always appreciated that because my dad allowed me to ask the questions and didn't just give me a pat answer. He said, hey, figure it out. Figure it out. Number 5, why are so many Christians hypocrites? Big question, right? You've heard this one before. Why are so many Christians hypocrites? And to that I would first say, well, tell me what you mean by hypocrites. How would you define that? Tell me what you're talking about with this whole idea of hypocrisy. Because what I often find is that people confuse a hypocrite with someone they simply see failing or falling down. You see, a hypocrite is someone who purposefully wears a mask, who purposefully tries to appear spiritual, who tries to make people feel that they have it kind of all together, and who tries to make it appear as though they are morally and spiritually superior to others. That's a hypocrite. But that's very different than someone who simply fails your expectations or who you catch messing up one day. So I'll be honest, if you were to come spend a day with me, I'm going to be honest about this. If you were to come and spend just a day with me, I would disappoint the snot out of you. I really would. That doesn't make me a hypocrite, though, does it? Does that make me a hypocrite? Or just a flawed human being who's trying as hard as I can to follow Jesus? You see, here's what really matters. What would my life be like if I didn't have Christ? What would my life be like if I didn't have Christ? You see, that's the real question of authenticity. I would disappoint you a whole lot more on this mythical day if I didn't have Christ. You see, the opposite of hypocrisy, folks, is not perfection. The opposite of hypocrisy is spiritual authenticity. With all of your sins, with all of your failings. But even if you see raw hypocrisy in someone's life, so what? I mean, honestly, who really cares? I mean, it's Jesus you're needing to explore and a decision about that, and not people who spiritually pose, much less how effective his followers are at emulating his life. Think of it this way. Imagine an elementary school orchestra putting on Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. They'd pretty much butcher it, wouldn't they? Right. But that doesn't mean Beethoven's Fifth isn't an amazing piece of work, right? Don't judge the composer by the performance. And it's the same with Christians. I may fail you, but the real issue isn't my feeble attempts to follow Christ. The real issue is Christ. So honestly, hypocrisy is really just a smokescreen. Number 6. I know I don't agree with whatever, so can I still explore? As in, I believe in gay marriage. I believe abortion is every woman's right. I believe in global warming. I don't watch Fox News. Whatever. I figured you'd start to get that in a second here, okay? I'm just not sure that's where you are. I'm not sure. I perceive Christians to be this way. Should I even bother? And the answer is absolutely yes, you should explore Christianity. And here's why. You may find, and I'm not necessarily going back to those first things I just posed, but you may find that what you think Christianity maintains isn't what it maintains at all. You see, a lot of people have very deep misconceptions of what Christianity really maintains. You may have some misconceptions floating around about the caricatures of the Christian faith. So you may think that you're not in agreement when maybe you are on some things, but you've never checked them out. And even if there are some sticking points, which there's going to be, here's what everybody needs to wrestle with. If you go into exploring mode and become convinced that there is a God and he has made himself and truth about himself known, then how are you going to feel about the disagreements you thought you had with him and his truth in the front end? I mean, won't you be glad that you didn't let that stop you? You see, at this point in time, you have everything to gain. No matter what disagreements you think you have absolutely nothing to lose at this point in time. And this is how I answer somebody who brings this up to me. If in the end your thinking lines up with Christianity, great. If not, but you feel that Christianity has a stronger case, and you know what? You might find out that you begin to change some of your views about what you actually thought you believed in. That's still great. I mean, honestly, at this point in time, what do you have to lose? You know, when somebody comes to me and poses that question to me, and I get this one a lot, well, I believe in this, I believe in this, I believe in this. I always sit down with them and say, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about it. Let's work through it. Let's get to the answers. You have absolutely, at this point in time, as a non-follower of Christ, you have nothing to lose, do you? You have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain. Because if what I'm telling you is correct, then eternity hangs in the balance, doesn't it? Eternity hangs in the balance if what I say is correct. So let's explore it together. And you might find out that we might actually agree on some things. And you might find out that, hey, you know what? I've had these views about this or about that or about this. And I'm not sure I actually really believe that anyways. I said this last week, and I want you to get this. I want you to understand this when you're sharing your faith with somebody. This is important. You ready? It is not your job to change people. Did you hear me? It's not your job to change people. That's God's job. Let God do the changing. You answer the questions the best you can, and you allow God to work on their life. You allow God to change their heart. And you know what? If they're willing to explore Christianity, their hearts might just open to God. Number 7, this is a big one. Are you accepting of gays? This is a big one. We don't talk about this in church very often. Are you accepting of gays? I talked a little bit about this last week about my friend. And my answer to this has always been, of course. Why wouldn't we be? There's no doubt that there have been Christians who in the past and even today have been unloving and ungracious and hateful towards members of the LGBTQ community. And folks, listen, that's their sin. You see, God, listen, you need to understand, you need to listen very closely to what I'm going to be saying here, okay? Some of you are already making snap judgments. So listen very closely to what I'm going to say here. God cares deeply about every human being on this planet. He loves them, and he wants to be in relationship with them, period. You hear me? Period. Which means that every single person, listen, is welcome in our church. They are accepted, they are loved, and they are cared for. But here's where it gets tricky. And this is true of any human lifestyle. Any human lifestyle. If you want to make acceptance also mean affirmation, then that's a separate conversation which we're happy to have, but it's a separate conversation. Because acceptance and affirmation are two very different things. But however that subsequent conversation plays out, whether to everyone's liking or not, we can always, listen, we can always love, right? And we will. You see, our invitation is to explore Jesus. Once again, folks, let me say it again to you. Our job is not to change them. Our job is to share Christ and allow Christ to change them. So our invitation is to explore Jesus, figure out where you stand with Jesus and how he applies to your life. And then after you figure out whether you believe in Jesus and you believe that Jesus is who he said he is, look at what he has to say about all kinds of things in your life, including the choices you make about sex. But listen, don't get this out of order because we do so often, don't we? Because there is no point in having this conversation until you settle where do you stand with Jesus. Make sense? Where do you stand with Jesus? Not let's get all this mess cleaned up first, because listen, before we come to Jesus, listen, you need to hear this. Before we come to Jesus, we're all a mess. All of us, we're a mess. Doesn't matter what, before Jesus, we're all a mess. Jesus does the changing. And Jesus has changed my heart over my lifetime so many times. And I could march a few of you up here and you could talk about how Jesus has changed your life and what your life was like before Jesus. And you can say, oh yeah, Christians tried to change me and all that kind of stuff, and it never did any good. It wasn't until I came into this relationship with Jesus Christ that God changed my life. God made me whole. God gave me a whole new outlook on life. And yeah, I struggle. I struggle with it all. If you want a great book on this, if you're into reading, I've got a great book for you. Write it down. It's called Out of a Far Country. It's a book I read. I actually found out as I was reading the book, I was a student at Moody when he was a student at Moody. I had no idea. I don't think I ever miss him. His name is Christopher Yuan, who lived most of his life in a homosexual lifestyle. And he talks about it. He talks about the struggle. He's actually a professor at Moody today and travels still all over the world and talks about this and talks about his journey and his life and everything else. If you want a great book on that. But he talks about that whole idea of it wasn't until I came into this relationship with Jesus that I realized that I had to change. And Jesus began to do the changing. Christians tried to change me all the time, and I wasn't interested in that. But then somebody, it was his own mother, began to point him to God. And it was God who changed. Listen, there's no point in having this conversation until you settle where you stand with Jesus. Number 8. Isn't it enough just to be a good person? And this is so big. As a matter of fact, I'm going to map this out for you. You might be wondering why there's a ladder on the stage. That's not to fix something after church is done. But so many people think, I've been a good guy. I've really been a good person. I've lived a good life. I've never killed anyone. So when it comes to all of this stuff, I should be fine. I've kind of heard that God kind of grades on a curve. So let me tell you how I handle this when it comes up in a conversation about how good is good enough. And usually I kind of draw this out for them kind of on a piece of paper and stuff to kind of drive this home a bit. But this is, and just so you know, this is not original to me. This is just something I've played with over the years. So I'm actually going to move this over here, set it over here. We're going to pull this ladder up a little bit more because I want you to see this. We're going to map this out for you. If we were to start off kind of at the top and say, okay, what is good? We would all say that what? Who's good? God. Okay, that's pretty easy, right? So let's place God at the top of this ladder. Let's place God at the top of this ladder here. So God is our ultimate standard of good. Okay? Now, what about the bad guys? What about the axe murderers, the rapists, all those kind of people that are just these bad guys? If you were to think of somebody who would be maybe at the bottom of the rung in the last 20 years, you might think of somebody by the name of, somebody who's just been absolutely horrendous by the name of Osama bin Laden. Let's just use that name, okay? I think we can all agree that pretty bad dude. So let's place him on the bottom. Now, if I was to hand you a pen, and I was to say, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to write your name on a piece of paper, and I want you to put it on the ladder where you think you would be. But before you do that, let's get a couple more benchmarks on this ladder here, okay? If I were to ask you who is the most holy, most spiritual, godliest person who's ever lived in the last 50 years or so, who would you name? You know that 9 out of 10 people would probably say Mother Teresa. Pretty holy person, did a lot of really great things in life and everything else. But this is probably what most people would say. Where would you place Mother Teresa on the scale between God and bin Laden? Now, let me tell you something that maybe you didn't know about Mother Teresa. She was so conscious of her sin. She felt that she fell so short of God's standards that she couldn't even imagine placing herself anywhere near the top. She would have placed herself far, far, far down the scale in relation of what she knew about her own life. She probably would have placed herself closer to bin Laden than she would have placed herself to God. But let's just say, for argument's sake, let's just place her here. Okay? Now, if I was to say, I want you to name who would be kind of one of the greatest statesmen of our faith in the last couple of years, you might say who? Billy Graham. Great statesman of our faith and everything else. And I would agree with you that I would just put Billy because it wasn't going to fit on here for you to see it. But I happen to know that Billy Graham looked at the life of Mother Teresa and he was astounded at her walk with God, at her holiness, at her spirituality. He would have placed himself far, far, far south of her life. He would tell you that he is such a sinner in need of the grace of God toward his life, that he falls so short of God, and he would tell you that I need God every single day. So let's place Billy Graham right there. Now I'm going to give you one more. This is a guy that I know, and his name is Andrew. Now, in my life, I've been a pastor since I was 19 years old. I've had the incredible opportunity of starting 4 or 5 youth ministries throughout my life. Made impacts on kids' lives. As a matter of fact, one of the kids that I took with me on a missions trip some years ago in the very first church that I ever pastored is a missionary today in India. Done a lot for God. And other kids that I youth pastored through my Haitian church have gone back to Haiti to be medical missionaries and all kinds of stuff. And I wouldn't consider myself even able to tie the shoes of Billy Graham. So if I were to take myself and put myself on the ladder here towards God, I would probably place myself right about there. So now the pen is in your hands. Where would you place yourself? Where would you put your mark of where you stand in relation to God? You get the point, don't you? I think we all get the point. The idea how good we are and where we stand in relation to God can be very misleading, even deceptive, because we can think that we're okay when really we're not. And the truth is, listen, the truth is, whether you like any of these people or not that's on this ladder, the truth is none of us are okay. Not even one. None of us are good enough to earn salvation. None of us all of us are in this broken relationship with God, and all of us need God. But you see, none of us, no one is in less of a broken relationship with God and in less of need of a way to God than anyone else. We're all in the same boat, folks. We're all in the same boat. And that's the real issue, how to be made right with God. Number 9, what's so unique or special about Christianity? What's so unique or special about Christianity? And that one's also pretty easy. Jesus. Jesus. And let me just say it again, if you want to explore Christianity, if you want to settle anything, first and foremost, it's where do you stand with Jesus? You see, everything about the Christian faith rises and falls on Jesus. He said he was God himself in human form, come to planet Earth to show the way, and then lay down his life as a sacrifice for our sins. And from that, offering us forgiveness and restored relationship with God. No other religious figure in all of history has ever claimed to be God in human form. No other major religious figure ever claimed to offer forgiveness of sins. No other religion has anything like the person and teaching of Jesus. And that's what makes Christianity special and unique. Number 10. How can there be only one way? How can there be only one way? And I want you to think about what we've already discussed. How can he be only one way? Because there was only one Jesus. Now, you can ask, so is there anything good and true in other religions? Are you saying that every other religion is completely wrong? And the answer to that question is no. C.S. Lewis once wrote that if you are a Christian, you do not have to believe that all the other religions are simply wrong all through. If you are a Christian, you are free to think that all these religions, even the strangest ones, might contain at least some hint of the truth. You know, when we're in Guyana, I'll just give this real quick before I get it back into this. When we're in Guyana, one of the things that we were taught, and this is coming from an Islam, a person who converted from Islam to Christianity. He taught us how to share our faith with those from the Islam religion. We don't get to use the New Testament. We have to use the Old Testament because they'll accept the Old Testament. And we sit down and we go onto their ground and on their footing, and we use some of their own theology to share Jesus with them. So Lewis goes on to suggest we think of it in terms of arithmetic. There's one and only one right answer to 2 plus 2, right? The answer is 4. But if you were to answer 6, you'd be a lot closer to the truth than somebody who answered 37. While there's only one right answer, some answers are closer to being right than others. But make no mistake, that doesn't mean that all roads lead to God. The differences are acute. Christianity believes in a personal God. Buddhism does not even believe in a higher being. Buddhism is, in essence, an atheistic religion. Christians believe there is one God. Hindus believe there are millions of gods. Christians embrace Jesus as God himself in human form. Muslims don't even rank Jesus up in the top of the prophet food chain, much less the Savior of the world. So whenever you have divisions like this, you only have 2 options in life. You can either say that somebody is right in that particular area and everybody else is wrong, or you can say that everyone is wrong. But what you can't say is that everybody is right. You can't say that everybody believes about the same thing, that it's all the same path, the same idea, the same God. That would be intellectually confused at best and dishonest at worst. So you can't say that. You can't say that, all religions are right. You can't say that, not intellectually. Number 11. How can a loving God, this is a big one, how can a loving God send someone to hell? How can a loving God send someone to hell? Super short answer, he doesn't. Show me anywhere in Scripture where God sent someone to hell. It's not there. We send ourselves. So when someone flippantly says, so you're saying Gandhi is in hell, my answer is to say Gandhi is where Gandhi chose to be. And I would be worried less about Gandhi and more about you. You see, folks, we have a choice. We can bend a knee toward God in this life, and we can say, God, thy will be done. Or at the end of our life, we can stand before God, and God can say, thy will be done. Now, some might push back and say, but why is there even a hell? That doesn't sound like a loving God. Why would a loving God have something like hell in existence? And I totally disagree. The existence of heaven and hell shows that this is a moral universe, and that God is a moral God, and that there is truth, and there is justice, and there is righteousness. Do you really want a spiritual universe, a moral order without hell, without punishment, where Hitler and Bin Laden are as rewarded as Billy Graham? Do you want a cosmic order where pedophiles are praised and rapists are celebrated, where nothing is ever seen as sin? God just kind of chuckles at it all in some kind of stupid senility. Is that what you think is good and right? Is that what we think is good and right? Listen, I get that hell is disturbing to you, and it should be disturbing to you. It should be a hard-edged truth, but listen, folks, it's a truth, and it's a necessary truth. There wouldn't be a moral universe without it. Listen, hell is a terrible, dreadful, horrific place. But its existence isn't what is evil. Its existence is what is moral. Because a good God must punish evil. And you may ask, so how does love fit in? And I'm so glad you asked that question. It fits in with Jesus dying on a cross, doesn't it? Justice must be carried out. God cannot deal with sin except as holiness demands. And if he didn't punish it or make adequate satisfaction for it, he would be forgiving it unjustly, which he cannot do because he is not a corrupt judge. What is just is to receive the just penalty. But God loves us. So he offers a way for our sin to be addressed in both his holiness, which is the punishment we deserve, and his love, which is the relationship that he longs for. And that is what God accomplished through the cross. You see, folks, that was our cross. But God took our place, took our punishment. He stepped in and he took the verdict, and then taking it, offered us amnesty to anyone who would accept it. Which means, and make sure you get this, those who don't come to the cross of Christ aren't being sent to hell by God. Those who don't come to the cross are choosing to not be saved from hell by God. That's a profound difference, isn't it? A profound difference. Number 12. Why is there so much pain and suffering in this world and bad things happening to good people? And this is not a question that any soundbite answer can do justice to. You see, I could have expanded so much deeper into all 12 of these questions today. But there are 2 or 3 thoughts related to this last question that I think you need to understand. First, why is there this idea that somehow the problem of evil and suffering in the world is Christianity's problem? No, you see, it's everybody's intellectual, moral, and spiritual challenge, isn't it? It's everybody's. If you reject Christianity because of the existence of suffering in the world, then you need to reject every philosophy, every worldview, every ideology, and every religion, because the reality of suffering is not just unique for Christianity to try to explain. I don't care if you're Buddhist, Mormon, Muslim, Scientologist, Hindu, atheist, everyone must answer the question about why this is such a messed up world that we live in. This is not just Christianity that has to answer it, is it? It's not just Christianity. Everybody has to answer this. Second, why is there this idea that when we encounter evil, somehow God must be to blame for it? Where are we getting that? Where does that come from? Why do people say, I can't believe that God did that? The Christian writer, one of my absolute favorites, I'm reading his book right now, another one. Christian writer Philip Yancey was contacted by a television producer after the death of Princess Diana to appear on a show and explain how God could have possibly allowed such a tragic accident. And he said to the producer, could it have had something to do with a drunk driver going 90 miles an hour in a narrow tunnel? How exactly was God involved? And that's a great question, isn't it? But one that most people never ask. Yancey went on to write of 3 other situations. First, when boxer Ray Boom Boom Mancini killed a Korean boxer in a match, he said in a press conference, sometimes I wonder why God does the things he does. And then how in a letter to a Christian family therapist, a young woman told of dating a man and becoming pregnant. She wanted to know why God allowed that to happen to her. And finally, he writes how in her official confession, when South Carolina mother Susan Smith pushed her 2 sons into a lake to drown and then blamed an imaginary carjacker for the deed, she went running after the car and she began to yell as this car was running down the ramp. She began to yell, oh God, why did you let this happen? Yancey then asked a pivotal question. What exactly was the role that God played in a boxer pummeling his opponent, a teenager abandoning her virtue, or a mother drowning her own children? And the simple fact is that God lets us choose, and we do. So this idea of throwing evil and suffering at the feet of God as if it's his deal is really unfair, folks. The vast majority of the evil in this world is self-inflicted. Or it is inflicted on us by someone who is choosing to sin, which raises a question of why doesn't he just step in and just end it all, end all evil, end all suffering? And I'm going to give you a reason. Are you ready? Mercy. Love. Let me ask you something. If God wiped out all evil, all wrongdoing, all injustice, every person who committed harm against another person tonight, how many of us would be left to see the dawn? Anybody? I wouldn't. You see, God could wipe out all evil, all suffering this very night, but he doesn't. And the reason he doesn't is because of his love for people like you and for people like me. Because if at midnight tonight, God decreed that all evil would be stamped out in the universe, not one of us would be here at 12:01. He's enduring it. It's like an ulcer in his stomach. Why? In the hopes that by enduring it, he would seize the opportunity for more to turn to him. But there is coming a day when God is going to say, enough, enough. Be grateful he hasn't shouted it yet. So where is God? Where is God between the now and the not yet? With the suffering of this world, are you ready? Right by our side. Caring, heartbroken, longing to comfort us. But listen, that's not all. God has also invested himself in the process of healing the wounds that have come from our choices by entering into the suffering process with us in order to lift us out of it. You see, God himself came to earth in the person of Jesus and suffered. You see, Jesus knows about pain. He knows about rejection. He knows about hunger. He knows about injustice. He knows about cruelty because he has experienced it all. And on the cross, he paid for the price of our choices, so that our lives could be healed through forgiveness and our lives could be healed through a second chance, so that evil, pain, and suffering would not be the final word. Frederick Buechner put it this way: like a father saying about his sick child, I do anything to make you well. God finally calls his own bluff and does it. So the real question about God and pain and suffering is this: will the pain and suffering drive you away from God, or will you let it drive you to him? 12 questions, and hopefully a start at 12 answers. And let me tell you something, folks, they're good questions, important questions. And if you're not a Christian, keep asking these questions like so many people are. And if you are a Christian, keep answering them. That's why I did this morning, because so often you come to church and you're given all this great information and you don't ever know what to do with it. I hope this morning you know what to do with it. That we gave you kind of a benchmark on how to answer some of these questions. And if I were to throw a 13th one up here, and somebody asked you a question, they said, and you just had no idea how to answer it, you know what's okay to say? I don't know. But you know what? I'm going to go and find out for you. You know how many times I've done that in my life? Hundreds. I don't have all the answers, but we can find out. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much. And Father, I really did want to take some time this morning and go through this because I think it is so, so, so important, God, that we know and we understand, God, what the questions that are being asked are, Father. We live in a world, Father, that is really what we consider nowadays a post-Christian world. And Father, so many young people have questions about the faith, questions about Christianity, and they come and they ask us, and we have no idea. And I hope that this morning we gave just a little glimpse into how to answer some of these questions. And I know we took some time this morning to do this, but I felt it was so, 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 so important, because this is important. As Peter says, we need to be ready to give a defense of our faith. When somebody comes and asks us, we need to be ready. But maybe you're sitting here today and you're saying, Andrew, I heard those questions today. And I have asked those questions over and over and over and have never had any answers. And this morning, I got some answers. And I think I'm ready to step across this line and have Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And if that's you, if you're sitting here this morning, you're saying, Andrew, I need Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I understand that now. I heard that this morning. I heard that Jesus came and he offered his life, and that as Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, no man comes to the Father except through me. Man, Andrew, I believe that. I believe that Jesus is the only way of salvation. And if that's you and you're sitting here saying that right now, would you just pray with me just quietly in your heart? Just you and God. Just follow me in this prayer. Just say, Father, I need your Son, Jesus. And right now, God, I'm asking him to come into my life and to save me from all of my sins. Thank you, God, for sending your Son to this earth to die on a cross for me, to take my place, but then to rise again and give us victory over death and to give us eternal life, an eternal life that we can spend in heaven with you. If you just prayed that prayer, would you take that tear off that we asked you to fill out? Would you just mark that box in the back that says, I'm committing my life to Christ? We're excited for you. We want to help you on this journey of knowing and understanding what it means to be in a relationship with Jesus Christ. Father, we thank you so much for all that you do for us. We thank you for your love. We thank you for how you love us, God. We thank you for sending Jesus to this earth. And God, we thank you that you've given us the answers to these questions. And that ultimately, in the end, God, you are the answer.